In this video, we're going to be learning how to use the Studio One project page. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. Now the Studio One project page is one of my favourite features of Studio One. It's unique and you don't find it in other DAWs. But by the time you come to wanting to use it, you're probably in a bit of a hurry to get your songs mastered and get them out to the world. So this video is a very straightforward and practical guide to using the project page in Studio One. We're going to go through a few steps from importing songs all the way through to exporting them ready for release. But I will say up front, this is not a mastering tutorial. I'm not going to be going through details of which particular plugins I use in mastering or what order I use them in. That would be for another tutorial. If you want me to make a tutorial like that, let me know in the comments down below. And if enough of you ask, I will make that tutorial with absolute pleasure. Now, if this is your first time here, do make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so that you get notified about my other videos. But let's get stuck in now to some mastering in the Studio One project page. So here we are on the start page of Studio One and I want to create a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and click New Project. At the top there, it's the second choice here, and I'll click on that and it brings up a dialog box. And there's a couple of things that we're going to fill in here. First of all, the project title there. I've got something on my clipboard rather than type it in, and that's Project 2020. And then I'm going to set the sample rate. Now I like to set the sample rate according to the sample rate which I recorded my songs at. Now I recorded all of these songs at 48 kilohertz. That's a standard for video, and obviously I produce a lot of music and soundtracks for video. You may have something different. As I say, it's probably, I would recommend keeping it at the same sample rate as that which you chose for your songs, and that may be more typically something like 44.1, or it could be one of the higher sample rates which you can see there. So you set your sample rate and click on OK, and it immediately opens up this new project. Now there's three main areas to the screen which you can see here, and rather than go through them one by one, we're going to learn them as we actually work our way through a real project. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just set some values for my project, and I'm going to start off with the album title right at the top there at the left. I'm going to click where it says album, and I'm going to type in my project name in this case again. So my album's going to be called Project 2020, odd name for an album, hey? And then the artist name there. So my artist name is Mike Enjo, which I'll type in there. Now you could just leave it at that, but there is some other metadata which you can put in. You just click on the triangle here, and then you'll see a whole bunch of fields appear there. Now, when I'm filling in things like songwriter and composer, arranger, I like to make sure I'm using my full legal name. It's just a nice habit to get into to make sure you do collect your royalties efficiently, should you be getting any. So I'm going to paste in here my full legal name, which is Michael Enjo, composer Michael Enjo, arranger Michael Enjo. I'll leave the genre and I'll put the year in there, 2020. Now, you can also add some album artwork as well if you wish. I'm going to do that by clicking on this browse button here. I'll just click on that. It opens up some artwork there. I'll choose this one here, which is fine. Now, it's a good idea to design your artworks in a square format, of course. Now, you can choose sort of any size, but it's going to resize it. You'll see that in a moment. So I'll click on open. It was much bigger than they expected. So they've said the image size limit is 1400 by 1400. Do you want to scale the image? I'll say yes. And it's just going to scale that image and put that in there for me. All good. Okay. You don't have to fill all this out, but I'm sort of OCD about that kind of thing, so that's why I've done it. So I'll just click on that triangle there again to collapse that box, and I'm going to start bringing in my actual songs. Now at this point you've got a few different choices, and the more traditional method is to have saved a stereo WAV file from your project, and then you could import that here. And if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to show you a different method which works really, really well and has a couple of cool tricks up its sleeve, which you're going to find out about at the end of the video. So kind of bear with me here. And rather than import the WAV file, we're actually going to import our song file. So song files are the files which are created when you're recording your songs in Studio One. They have the .song extension, okay? So I'm going to find my song files by going to the bottom right, clicking on Browse. Brings up my browse window. Now you'll see at the top I've got it, it probably starts off on effects for you. I've got files selected, and then I can see all the files there. You can sort of navigate through different folders on your system there. So I'm going to go through to this folder, which is open here. I've got a few songs in here in different folders, which are under my artist name there. And I'm going to start off by selecting this one, Hanging On. So if I go in there, I'll see the song file there. Okay, that's the one I was talking about earlier. Okay, now I'm just going to click on that and I'm just going to drag it over here. Now, you're going to get this little pop-up appear, and it's going to ask you about updating the mastering files. So what's actually happening here is it's now going to create a WAV file based upon the song file which we've put in there. Now, this may seem a little bit of an odd thing for you at the moment. As I say, bear with me, because it hasn't found any existing mastering files associated with this song file. It's going to now create them. So I'm going to click on OK. Now, what this will do now is actually go ahead and open up that song file in Studio One. Okay, so it's going to take a little while because this has got quite a few effects in this one, and there's a bunch of stuff it's got to load up. So it's going to load that song file, and then it's going to actually create a stereo master file, nice high quality one, which it's going to associate with that song file. Okay, so it's going to take a few moments. So I'll just speed up the video here while it's doing that. Okay, so it's finished doing that. It says updated 1 of 1 mastering files. What it's actually done in the background is next to that song file, it's created a folder. I think it's called masters or mastering. And in there, it's created a WAV file with exactly the same name as the song file name. It's associated those two things together. And you can see it's appeared down the bottom here. You can see that waveform. And if I move the playhead there and then just play, see you break down on your... we can see we've got our song in there. And just notice the little icon there. That's going to be important right at the top next to the song name. It's got this specific icon which shows it's a song file which it's loaded in. Now, if you need to change the song name here because this is based on the file name and you may have an odd file name, you can just double click on that and set the actual name of the song, and that's going to be a little bit useful later. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding some more songs to this project. But with the other ones, you'll see that they go in there much, much quicker. And that's because I've already used these ones in a project before, so they have an associated master file or master waveform. So I'll just go ahead and start dragging them in like so. And you can see as I drag them in at the bottom of the screen, they start appearing, and there's sort of 2 lanes here, and they just go on alternate lanes. That's done automatically for you so that you just haven't got them all on one lane. So I'll just keep dragging them in. There's a 4th one and then a 5th one. Now, of course, you know, I used very convenient file names here, which were just the name of the song. As I say, you may have some different file names and you'll want to go ahead and just double click on those names and rename them. Okay, so that's the first part of our process, actually getting the songs into the project. Now I'm going to continue by adding some information to each of the songs. You don't have to do this at this stage. I like to do it and get it out of the way. It's really nice later when you do export your songs, especially if you're exporting to, say, formats like MP3, where the metadata, the song information, is exported along with the audio. It's really nice to have that done. Now, for many albums, of course, it's one artist. The artist may be you, as in this case, it's me. And if that's the case, then you don't have too much typing ahead of you, okay? Because I know if you're like me, you really do not like typing at all. So the way I'm going to speed it up is by making sure I select all of the songs here. So I'm just selecting the first one, holding Shift on the keyboard, selecting the last one. And that's going to make sure that any changes I make to one of these songs is applied to all of them. So I'm just going to click the little arrow next to the song name there, okay, right at the top, next where it says Hanging On, and that expands that song. And I'm going to change the artist to Mike Enjo, like so. The songwriter I have on my clipboard, I'll type that in, Michael Enjo. I'm going to use my legal name again there, and then I should type in the year. Okay, so that's that done, and I'm also going to select some artwork again. So I'll just click on the 3 little dots there, click on that, go ahead and select my artwork. It's going to resize it just as it did before. And then with that done, you should see that as you open up each song now by clicking on the little triangle next to it, all of that metadata is in there. You didn't have to type it out for them. So if there's any variation on them, obviously you may have worked with other people and there may be some variation with songwriters, composers, arrangers along the way. So make sure you just jump in and do all of that. But this information is going to be saved with some of the export formats that we'll look at later. Okay, so that is that little bit of housekeeping done. Now the other thing I like to do at this stage is get the loudness information for each file. Now you'll see up here that there's this little arrow here which says loudness information. If I click on that, it will now grab it for all of those 5 songs. Now that's because I had all 5 selected. You can do them individually if you like. The loudness information is really good for checking the basics, like making sure you haven't clipped in your output, so you haven't been clipping on the master bus in your mix. You'd want to go back to your song file and correct that if that was the case. And also for getting things like the sort of average level, things like the LUFS or the RMS information of your song, so that you can see kind of where your starting point is. So it's just about done that for me now, and you can see now if I select that first song, you can see the loudness information there. So the same for the second one there. I'll just click on the triangle to expand it. So it's just useful information to have before you go ahead and start mastering. So before we go ahead and start mastering the songs by applying some plugins to them, I'm just going to do some very simple edits, what I call topping and tailing, meaning that I'm going to tidy up the beginnings and the ends of each waveform here for the song. When Studio One creates these waveforms and it goes into the songs and mixes them down, it does it according to the start and the end markers in the song file. So it does that part in between those 2 markers. So if you found that a part of your song was missing after you imported it here, that means you need to go back into the song file and just adjust those start and end markers so that it can get the whole waveform. And there's usually going to be some parts at the beginning and the end that you don't want. So that's what we're going to tidy up now. Now I'm going to be doing a lot of zooming in and out during this process. So just so you know, to zoom in, I press E on the keyboard. It's much, much quicker than using the controls on the screen. And to zoom out, I press W on the keyboard. And it's going to stay centered to wherever the playhead is. So if I put the playhead up here in the middle of this song and I zoom in, it's going to stay in the middle of that, so that's handy to know. So I'll just go right to the beginning of the first song there. I'll move the playhead there and I'm going to zoom all a long way in. Now you can see there's a big gap at the beginning here, a whole bunch of silence which we don't want. So I'm just going to hover over the beginning of the waveform there. You'll see the cursor changes there, and then I'm just going to grab that and drag it across just to trim the beginning off there. Okay, and if we move the playhead up to here, you can hear, guess this is goodbye. So that's how the song starts. Now I'm just going to zoom in a little further and show you, just in case you have a little pop or a click there, which is possible sometimes. What you want to do is zoom in and just do a very, very short fade in. And you do that by going to the little white triangle that you can see there at the top left of the waveform there, and just dragging it across a little. As small as you like, it doesn't matter, and that's going to get rid of any pops or clicks that you may have there sometimes. Now, there's still a big gap at the beginning. The actual track is going to start playing from here, so there's still a big gap there, even though we've trimmed that wave file. We need to move it along. So I'm just going to grab it in this case, and I'm going to move it along like so. So it's just inside that track marker there, okay? So now when someone listens to that song, it's going to capture this information. Guess this is goodbye. Okay, and that's fine. So if I zoom out now and go towards the end of the track, we've got a little bit of a problem, you can see, okay? There's a big long gap at the end of this because we shuffled that whole waveform along. First of all, I'm going to deal with the waveform itself and add a nice fade out here, okay? So there's a final chord that plays here. I'll just put my playhead there, have a listen. I'm now going to look for where I want the end of the fade out to be, which I'm going to say is here. I'll just click on there, and then I'm just going to grab the end of this waveform, again hover my mouse over there and drag it up like so, so that we've cut the end of that waveform off. Now what I like to do is create a fade out which kind of starts from just after that last chord was played, if your song's ending in this way. So I'm going to do that fade out like so. I'm just going to grab that white triangle on the top right and then just drag it across just about there. And I always check and have a listen to make sure it sounds natural. tad too long if you ask me, so I'm just going to move it up again like so. All right, so now we've still got this big long gap here because the actual track plays up until here before it goes to the next track. So we want to drag this one across, but don't just grab it and drag it. That's going to mess up the second track because Studio One always likes to keep that 2-second gap there, but it hasn't moved the waveform along with it. So I'll just undo that. What you want to do is hold Alt on the keyboard, and then as you're holding Alt, grab that little triangle at the end of the track there and then drag it across, and it's going to shuffle the next track and all the tracks after it along with it. Okay, and I'm just going to put that just after the end of that fade out like so, and that deals with the first song. Now I'll move on to the second song in the same way. I just want to grab the end of the waveform, drag it up like so, just so it begins nicely there. I won't check for a click there. I'll assume it's going to be okay. Now this time when I do drag this waveform up to the beginning of the track line, I want to hold Alt on the keyboard again. Okay, so I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and drag it up like so. Now if we go to the end of that song, we've got the similar problem that we had before. So again, I go ahead, I'll just do it really quickly and roughly here, probably add a fade out to the end like so. Normally I would check it, I wouldn't just do it with Vision. And again, holding Alt on the keyboard, I'm just dragging it up like so. Okay, you get the gist. So I'm going to go ahead now and do this with all of the songs. Now this isn't for an actual release, so I'm probably not going to do it all that carefully, but I will then speed up the video so you don't have to watch this whole process, because let's face it, it's not the most exciting thing in the world. And I'll see you on the other end. Okay, so I've done the topping and tailing, and I can now go ahead and start actually mastering the songs. By the way, you can change the order of these songs really easy at any time. So I could decide, look, I don't like the sound of this last song here, number 5, in that 5th position. I'll just move it up a bit in the order. You can just grab the name here and just drag that up like so, and it's going to shuffle all of those songs around accordingly, and it's going to keep those 2-second gaps in between the songs as well. You can also do it down here on the actual timeline. So if you grab the middle of the bar where it says the track 1, 2, 3, etc. there, you can just grab that, and you can also drag that off to different positions like so. Okay. So I prefer to do it up here, but it's up to you which way you want to do it. Okay, so now we're ready to do some actual mastering and start applying plugins. Now, if I didn't make it clear earlier, I will now. This is not a mastering tutorial in the sense of showing you in detail exactly which plugins I tend to use in my mastering chain and the sort of creative choices I make. If you want me to make a video about that, let me know in the comments down below. And if I get enough comments from you guys, I will definitely make that video. This is more of a functional process, which I'm going to show you now, how to apply different plugins during the mastering process and how to make your workflow nice and efficient. So I'm going to start off with the first song in the set here, and I'm going to apply my first plugin. So there's an area up here called Inserts. I'll click on the plus symbol there, and I'll go down to the plugin, which is in my Presonus folder. I'm going to choose VT1. I like this plugin, and I'm going to use it to apply a high pass filter. So I'll just switch that on, minor details here, and get it to a value where I'm going to start off with. Now, there's another couple of areas I could have applied the plugin. So first of all, the area that up here is the insert area. This is for the particular song that we're working on. So if I click away to other songs now, you'll see that insert is not there. It's only applied to this first song. The second area where I could have applied a plugin is down here under where it says master, under the inserts area again. Click on plus and add a plugin. Now any plugins which I add there will be applied to all of the songs. After the signal has gone through the plugins for that individual song, it will then go to this master bus here, and it will go through the plugins there. Now that's a really interesting area to add plugins if you want to try and get a sort of a continuity of sound across all of the songs on your release. I don't happen to use that very often. I prefer to do it on a song-by-song basis, although I am looking for continuity, but it's not my preferred choice. But just so you know, you can add in plugins there. Now, a place where I do use plugins is down in this area. This is the post area. Now this is post master fader. Okay, so the inserts area up here is before the fader, and the last area down here is after the fader, meaning that the plugins that you put here will be affected by the fader level on this master bus. Now the reason I use plugins here is I predominantly use it for sort of visual plugins or informative plugins, things like metering plugins that are going to give me information about the sound. It's handy to put it in there because once you pop it in there, you can use it to then meter any of the songs in your project. So that's my specific use for doing that. I know some people put sort of plugins which may be doing dithering or something like that in there. That would be another handy place to do that. That's for another subject for another day, of course. So I'm choosing in this case to add my plugin here. And of course, one of the things I want to do as I'm adding plugins is listen, and then I'll also be looking at my metering. So let's take a quick look at the metering now. I'll play a part of the song, and I'm going to focus on these two large areas here, the one at the top and this one down here mostly. So I'll play the song. Looking at you has a point. Now it's in its default setting at the moment, which is the third octave. So each octave is being divided into three here. You get these nice big chunks. I don't mind that view at all. You may want it a little bit more detailed. So for example, you could use this where it looks at every note in the frequency range, as it were, or notes that correlate to the frequency range on the piano keyboard that you can see there. So I'll play it again. Looking at you has a point. And there's various other ways of actually viewing the different frequencies there. So for example, here we could look at this. I think it's a sonographical, this is the spectrum mode. Looking at you has a point. And another one here, segments. And I'd like to hang around. So lots of different ways of actually viewing it. So just so you know, you do have all of those options there. As I say, I like it to have it as a third octave there. Now, the other area which I'm really interested in is the sort of level, the overall levels here. There's two things that you're going to see in this meter which goes off up to the side here. The peak values I'd be interested in, and things like RMS and average value. So let's just play and have a look for the peaks going up, and then also the white lines which show the current RMS values. So let's have a look. Looking at you has a point. I've used that a lot in the past. It's more applicable for me now if I am releasing it for something that's just going to be downloaded, or perhaps if I occasionally do burn songs to a CD, I get kind of interested in RMS levels. Some people like to use the other choices here. We've got K20, K14, K12. They're all common choices. This one at the end here, the EBU R128, is another way of measuring those things. Let's have a look at that. Looking at you has a point. But personally, in the past, I've tended to stick with the peak RMS. Now, the other thing which I want to draw your attention to are the meters over here, and the one which is highlighted, which is the LUFS meter, or LUFS. That's measuring it there. It's minus 19 at the moment. That's generally too quiet for a lot of streaming services, but that is why I use this one quite a lot more than anything else these days. I'm looking for that sort of average level in terms of measuring it in LUFS, or LUFS, however people pronounce it, LUFS, I'm not sure. And that's really handy these days when you're exporting for streaming services such as Spotify, iTunes, that kind of thing, even YouTube itself. Okay, so that's a very quick overview of the different options you have there for the metering. So I would be going ahead and adding various plugins now. For example, I like IK Multimedia's TR51. That's a major one that I would use there. And then I also particularly like, I'll just find it quickly, Isotope, the Maximizer. There we go. That one there. I like to have that one in there. As I say, this is not a mastering tutorial in that sense. I would normally have, for me personally, you may be different, but I'd normally actually have 5 or 6 different plugins there for different stages of mastering. Now, when you're mastering like a whole project, like an album or an EP, often you're going to use a very similar mastering chain for every single song. And it's a pain to have to import them all as you go to each song. So what you can do to speed things up is actually apply the ones that you've done to this first song to some of the others. Now, before I actually do this, I like to switch them off, because Although I may have the same signal chain on every single song, I don't like it to be on the on position when I first start mastering that song. I like to switch them on incrementally, especially for anything which is affecting the volume. But what I'll do now in order to apply this little simple signal chain to the second song here is go up to Inserts, wait till it changes to the hand there, and then just drag that over to the second song. Now if we go to the second song there, you'll see that all of those are applied there. Not on the other ones yet, we haven't done that yet. Now another way that you can do that is to save this signal chain here by going to this arrow here, going down to Store Effects Chain, click on that, we'll give it a name. It says hanging on inserts. I'll keep it as a default name. It doesn't matter for the moment. Click on OK. And then if I go to a song which I haven't started to master yet, I can just go to that arrow and then just apply that effects chain, which I just created there, and bang, it's all in there. So a couple of different ways to do it. So if you've got a very common signal chain that you use across different albums with different artists, etc., then you can store it there, and bang, you're off to a very, very quick start. And of course you can still go ahead and customize them as you go along, and change others, put some in between. Just like anywhere else in Studio One, everything's draggable to a different order like we can see there. So that's basically how I go about adding my plugins to master each song in Studio One. Okay, so while you've been away, I've been a bit of a naughty boy. I exited the project, I went into one of the songs and I made some slight changes to the mix. But have no fear, once I open the project again, Studio One knew this and has warned me that it needs to update the mastering files because I didn't create a new mastering file after I made a change to the mix in the song. So it's come up with this dialog box here. Now, if I go ahead and click OK to update the mastering files, what it's actually going to do is load up that project, that song again, and it's going to do what it did before and create a mix down for that song. Now, I'll speed up the video in a moment because it's going to take a while to do that. But it's really, really handy to be able to do this, to make changes to your song, to the mix in your song, then go back to your project file and still have all of the mastering plugins applied to it. Now, a little word of warning, of course, you may have changed the levels within your song. You may have actually made it a bit louder, a bit more quieter if you've done some drastic changes. So you'll probably want to just go through some of those plugins and check that level as you go through them. Make sure you're getting the output you expected. It's nearly done, but I will speed up the video and let it go ahead and make the master mix down of this song again. Okay, so it's finished doing that and it's taken me back to the project page, and it's informed me here in this box that's popped up, this updated one of the mastering files. So I'll click on OK and everything's cool. Now, the other thing that I can do is when I'm actually in my project here, let's say I'm listening to my project and I say, no, I really do have to tidy something up in that mix. I can just go ahead and I click on the icon here where it's got the icon saying that it's a song with the little spanner there. I double click on that and that's then going to open that song file for me. So I'll let it load up and then I'll speed up the video. I'll make my change. So I'll go ahead and make my change to the mix. I'll just think, that room mic for the vocals just wants to come down a bit. I'll go ahead and then save my song, okay, like I normally would, and then I'll close that song. And what it's going to do is it's going to close down that song, and it's going to, just make sure I clicked on close there, it's going to close down that song, and it's going to go back to the project page here, but with one important difference. You can see next to the icon of the song, it's showing me again that I've updated the song, but I haven't updated the mastering file yet. So it's just showing that in red there to warn me of that. So if I want to update the mastering file, the way I like to do it is I right click on there and I go to update mastering file, and it's going to go through that process again of loading up the song, creating a master WAV file, and then once it's done all that, it's going to take us back to the project page and we'll be ready to continue with our project. Okay, so once you've mastered all of your songs, you'll be wanting to export them, and there's various different formats available in Studio One. I'm going to be quickly going through some of them and then focusing on the more common ones. So the first one I want to talk about is CD, which we don't commonly do now, but some of you will still be exporting your songs for CD. Now, if you just want to burn it to a CD and you've got a CD device, burning device connected to your PC, then you just need to go up to Burn up the top here. Click on that. It's going to open a dialog box, which I won't do now because it's hard to close, which is going to ask you to select the device, and it will go ahead and create an audio CD for you. The second option in terms of CD is this image option, where you can just burn a CD image. So some companies, if you're duplicating CDs, will want a CD image rather than a physical copy of the CD, and you can obviously send it to them with an upload rather than physically having to send it to them. The other similar option to that is a DDP image. Now, this is different in the sense that it doesn't only contain audio information, it also has some of that metadata which we set up early, you know, artist, song title information, all that kind of good stuff. So some CD duplication services may be able to use that, and they may prefer you to send a DDP image. So you can just go ahead and create a DDP image from right here in Studio One. Now, the last one, which is the one I'm going to focus on, is more common for most of us these days, and this is a digital image, and there's a couple of options in there. So I've just clicked on that. You can see here that I have the different tracks selected, so you could exclude some of the tracks if you wanted to. And the first one I'm going to look at is the MP3 file format, because when you're going to make an MP3 file, maybe when you want to listen to it yourself, or you want to send it off to some different people to listen to, or you're going to make it available, say, for download on your website or from some other store which allows people to actually download MP3s, not talking about streaming, but actually downloading them. So this gives you the option of creating MP3s. You can set the sample rate and the bit rate here, and you're most likely going to try to go for the highest quality unless there's some specifics which the website that you're using asks for. And then you can do some nice things like add track numbers to the file names at the end, the artist name to the file name. So you can experiment with those and see what output you kind of like. I tend to like to have the track number and the artist name if it's for an actual album or an EP. If it's just a single, then I'll exclude the track number at the beginning there. Okay, so that's MP3s. Now, if you're uploading for a streaming service such as Spotify or for iTunes or Amazon Music, that kind of thing, you don't want to upload an MP3 because there's going to be some quality degradation at the stage that, you know, you compress it down to MP3. What you really want to do is export it to a WAV file. So select that, and then you can set the resolution there. Now, you want to check with the streaming service, you know, which requirements they prefer. Some of them will have some restrictions, but you're really trying to upload the highest possible quality that you can, because they are going to convert it on the streaming service to a format which can be efficiently streamed. So you don't want to sort of degrade the quality at all at this stage. You want to try and get the highest quality for them to begin with before they actually compress it to a streaming format. So those are the most important options there, and as I say, the last one there is the one that you're probably going to be using most these days, especially if you're uploading to groups like DistroKid, who I use to distribute my songs to the various different platforms. So was all of that clear for you? If you've got any questions at all, please do ask in the comments down below, and myself or someone else from this wonderful community will try their very best to help you out. Now, if you did like this video, you can help me out by making sure you hit the like button. That lets YouTube know that other people should see this video as well. If you didn't like this video for any reason whatsoever, hit the dislike button twice. And if you do like this kind of content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell on YouTube so that you're notified about my other videos. Also, if you're interested in any of the gear that you see me use in this studio when you're watching my videos, do check out my gear guide. There's a link to that down in the description, and I will be very happy to see you in the next video.